The rapid advance of Syrian rebels in Syria is causing serious concerns among Russian propagandists. After the capture of the city of Aleppo by opponents of the dictatorial regime of Assad, Z channels began writing about the threat to Russian naval base in Tartus. One of the Russian channels writes that the rapid advance of the rebels, the direct participation of the Turkish military, and the poor performance of Assad's troops, who are fleeing their positions under the pressure of the armed opposition, calls into question the existence of a Russian naval base in Tartus. Propagandists admit that due to the war against Ukraine, Russia does not have the resources to transfer forces to Syria, even to protect just one base in Tartus. If only conscripts are used, we'll see how everything develops, but the risk is quite real and growing, complains Z Channel. One of Syria's largest cities, Aleppo, came under the control of the opposition group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham on November the 29th. The defense of dictator Bashar al-Assad's army, reinforced by Russian special forces, collapsed. Moscow is preparing to send reinforcements. This was reported by the Reuters agency, citing 3 military sources. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham has returned to Aleppo 10 years after it was driven out of the city by Assad and his allies. The Syrian dictator, amid the fall of the city, urgently left for Moscow to ask for help. Russia, one of Assad's key allies, has promised him additional military aid to repel the rebel advance. New weapons will begin arriving within the next 72 hours, the article says. Meanwhile, Assad's troops have been ordered to safely retreat from Aleppo. The commander of one of the rebel brigades that carried out the breakthrough, Mustafa Abdul Jabbar, explained such a rapid breakthrough by the weakening of Iran. Tehran, having received very painful blows from Israel, was unable to effectively support Assad. Another ally of the regime, Moscow, which is bogged down in a war of attrition in Ukraine, is also having problems. The rebels said their offensive was in response to increased Russian and Syrian airstrikes on their areas in the Idlib in recent weeks. Sources close to Turkish intelligence said Ankara has given the green light to the offensive. Officially, however, Turkey has maintained a neutral stance and called for de-escalation.
Syrian government troops battled insurgents inside the country's largest city Aleppo for the first time since 2016, while warplanes targeted rebel supply lines on the city's edge, state media reported Saturday. Insurgents broke through government defense lines in Aleppo on Friday and entered the city's western neighborhood with little resistance. The insurgents launched their shock offensive in Aleppo and Idlib countryside on Wednesday and wrestled control of dozens of villages and towns along the way, including a strategic town south of Aleppo. The pro-government Al Watan newspaper reported airstrikes on the edge of Aleppo city, targeting rebel supply lines. It posted a video of a missile landing on a gathering of fighters and vehicles, in a street lined with trees and buildings. 20 fighters were killed in the airstrikes that targeted rebel reinforcements, said the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which monitors the country's unresolved civil war. Aleppo residents reported clashes and gunfire, and some were fleeing the fighting. Schools and government offices were closed Saturday as most people stayed indoors, according to Sham FM radio, a pro-government station. Bakeries were open. In social media post, the insurgents were pictured outside of Aleppo's citadel, the medieval palace in the old city center, and one of the largest in the world. In cell phone videos, the insurgents recorded themselves having conversations with residents they visited at home, seeking to reassure them they will cause no harm. State media reported that a number of terrorists, including sleeper cells, have infiltrated parts of the city. Government troops chased them and arrested a number who posed for pictures near city landmarks, state media said. On a state TV morning show Saturday, commentators said army reinforcements and Russia's assistance will repel the terrorist groups, blaming Turkey for supporting the insurgents' push into Aleppo and Idlib provinces. Russia's state news agency TASS quoted Oleg Ignasyuk, a Russian Defense Ministry official coordinating in Syria, as saying that Russian warplanes targeted and killed 200 militants who launched the offensive in the northwest on Friday. It provided no further details. Aleppo has not been attacked by opposition forces since they were ousted from eastern neighborhoods in 2016 following a grueling military campaign in which Syrian government forces were backed by Russia, Iran and its allied groups. The attack on Aleppo followed weeks of simmering low-level violence, including government attacks on opposition-held areas. Turkey, which has backed Syrian opposition groups, failed in its diplomatic efforts to prevent the Syrian government attacks, which were seen as a violation of a 2019 agreement sponsored by Russia, Turkey and Iran to freeze the line of the conflict.
Donald Trump has often talked about his warm relations with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un during his last term as president and has repeatedly claimed that their relationship will improve once Trump returns to power. Kim, however, has not been so friendly recently, accusing the United States of constantly aggressive and hostile policies toward North Korea. As Business Insider writes, analysts say Trump enters his second term in a weaker position than in 2017, and this time he will have to deal with a much tougher and more assertive Kim. Trump is keen to re-engage with Kim and plans direct talks after taking office. But Bruce Bennett, an analyst at the Rand Corporation, said it is unlikely Kim would meet with Trump even if Trump sought the opportunity, unless Trump is prepared to offer major concessions before the meeting. The world is becoming more complex and dangerous, and Kim is taking advantage of it. Trump has promised to end the war in Ukraine, possibly by handing over Ukrainian territory to Russia, but critics say a soft stance on Russian aggression will further empower North Korea. It will be interesting to see how the new administration reconciles a softer stance towards Russian aggression, now supported by North Korean troops and material, with continued efforts to dismantle North Korea's nuclear program, says Daniel Salisbury, a research fellow at the Center for Science and Security Studies at King's College London. Trump is likely to use carrots rather than sticks to achieve his strategic goals, analysts say. That means resuming direct diplomacy with Kim, with whom he has always had good relations. At the same time, Trump's promise to end the war in Ukraine could work in his favor, reducing Russia's dependence on North Korea and leaving the country isolated once again. A deal between Trump and Kim seems unlikely, but possible, according to Jeremy Chan, a senior analyst at Eurasia Group. Trump might not demand the North denuclearize and instead broker a freeze on nuclear development and weapons testing. In return, Trump could offer Kim sanctions relief and a reduction in the number of US troops in South Korea. The potential to achieve the strategic goal of being recognized as a nuclear power while coming out of the international cold is likely to be too great for Kim to pass up, especially as the war in Ukraine winds down, Chan says. As Ellen Kim, a senior fellow in the Korea chair at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, points out, events in Ukraine will ultimately determine whether Kim wants a new rapprochement with Trump. Neither maximum pressure nor flattery may work until the war in Ukraine is over. We have to see how North Korea's relations with Russia develop.